The Pacers schedule is out, and it's time to break it down and see what it all means. The hard parts, the important stretches, the back-to-backs, and how it all changes the perception of the Pacers season. It's all coming on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today it is my favorite show of the year because I learn the most from this show than any other show, and I'm the one talking a lot while learning. Pacers schedule breakdown, game by game. It sounds ridiculous, but it's so informative. You get to hear about all the Pacers back-to-backs, where all their tough stretches are in relation to the rest of their season, how the road trips play into everything, when they play teams more often than not. For example, all their Nets games are really late in the season. All sorts of interesting things about the Pacers schedule because it's now out. And Adam Friedman, one of the old co-hosts of the show and a former writer, Indy Cornrows, is going to join us to break it all down game by game, predicting wins and losses every step of the way and looking back on our predictions from last year. I learned a lot. I know you will too. And let's just get right to it. My personal favorite show of every single year. It's the Pacers schedule breakdown show. Learning where the hard parts are, the easy parts, the medium parts, the where the heck are you getting these predictions, Tony parts. It's my favorite show of the year. And joining me for our fifth, we tried to figure it out before. We did a terrible job. We skipped the COVID year because the schedule was insane. Predictions, schedule show. You've probably heard his voice here before. Used to be at Indy Cornrows. It's Adam Friedman. Adam, welcome back. The king of the schedule predictions.
Yeah, I was informed I've won 2 in a row.
2 in a row. Last year, we predicted the schedules. We were both low on the Pacers. Adam predicted they would go 20-62, and I predicted they would go 26-56. And yet still, despite them blowing those win totals out of the water, Adam correctly predicted 43 of the Pacers games, and I only correctly predicted 42. And you got the last 3 games right, and I got all 3 of the last 3 games wrong, and that is how we got you to a victory. It's crap. April killed me.
I guess I know how to pick when the Pacers might lose, basically.
Well, your prediction was that their opponents would be tanking, and the Knicks were not tanking, and that very much influenced the end of the season.
Oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense. I mean, they were the opposite of that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Ended up being quite good. I've been had. Either way, I'm coming back for victory this year. How we do this is we run through the schedule game by game. And it sounds boring, but it's important because you can see where the hard stretches are. You can see where back-to-backs are against opponents that might normally be inferior or teams you think of as free wins. You might see the end of a road trip against a crap opponent or see the first game back from a long road trip against a crap opponent. It's just a good way to break it all down. And we can talk about quickly every Pacers fan's favorite topic for some reason, national TV games. Before we dive in, Pacers have won January 30th in Boston on TNT against the 2 seasons ago Eastern Conference champion Boston Celtics. They're one of 8 teams who have won national television game. Adam, before I let you opine about this, I will first opine about this. This doesn't surprise me at all. If you gave me an over-under of 2.5 national TV games for the Pacers, I would have said under. Of the 8 teams that have one game, all 8 of them were in the lottery last year. The 5 other teams, since the Magic had 2 lottery picks, that have more than one national TV game. The New Orleans Pelicans, who have Zion Williamson and is a team that a lot of people like to watch. The Dallas Mavericks, who have Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving and are a team that a lot of people like to watch. The San Antonio Spurs, who have Victor Wembanyama, and most of their national TV games are early in the season because people like to watch the number 1 pick. The OKC Thunder. That one surprised me a little bit that they have 8. But they deserve a lot. They're good and up and coming. And they have Canada's best player. And the Utah Jazz, who have 2 instead of 1. Whatever. Are you surprised the Pacers did not get more than 1 national TV game?
No, they haven't made the playoffs in 2 seasons now. They won.
Whoa.
3 seasons. I'm sorry. They missed. Now. You're right. They lost the play-in. They haven't made it in 3 seasons, technically speaking. Yeah. They haven't won a playoff game in, I don't know what since 2017, 18, right?
5 years.
All right. It's been 5 years.
Yep.
No, they have a up-and-coming star who we hope becomes a superstar. But besides that, they don't have much attraction. I mean, with the NBA, you never know second half of the season if they start off really hot, right? Like they did last year a little bit, and they're in the mix at the 4-5 and seed. They could get a couple games flexed national TV, but on the surface, their over-under is like 37, and that's not usually that would be enough maybe to make the play-in. And no, it's not surprising.
They will be a blast to watch. Like they're going to score an F ton of points. Tyrese Haliburton is a delight to watch. Like that is generally a good TV product, but they're
there's
not
a lot
like,
of teams like that now. Like the league is in general is a high-scoring, faster league, so it's not
that
like
is true.
unique.
But the thing is, like, what people tune into on those national TV games is like established stuff, right? Like they know what they're going to see when they flip on the TV. And that's not really known with the Pacers yet, despite how good they were last year at times when Tyrese Haliburton was playing. His current stint with Team USA, there should be a sense of the team next year. I'd imagine next year when we do the show, this number will be closer to what did they have that first year after Depot was awesome? 8-ish, right?
Yeah, they'd have to win that many games and be that high of a seed.
Yeah, maybe.
And we were talking before the show. I mean, we're not going to try to base our picks on how many wins we think they'll have, but if they're even like best case scenario 7-8 seed.
Okay. The Atlanta Hawks have 5 this year. How about 5?
Yeah, but Atlanta Hawks have Trae Young.
Tyrese Haliburton's better than Trae Young right now.
I know, but Trae Young's a more known quantity right now.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. By the time the playoffs come, Haliburton definitely could be by next year a better quantity. But Trae Young is he was an established star. He came in the league as like a college, like a well-known college player, right?
That is true.
Averaging 35 points a game, I think, for Oklahoma, if I remember right. Like,
so if they make the play-in and they grow as it looks like they should, I think they'll have more next year. I was this always sounds mean. I was surprised people were surprised it was only 1, although I get the argument for them having more than 1. That is the end of the thing that fans want to know about. The other thing fans like to know about is back-to-backs. 13, tied for the lowest in the league. One of the very few teams who actually have fewer than last year because back-to-backs are up around the league because of the in-season tournament. They have to slam them because they don't want any of the in-season tournament games to be nights that a team would ever consider resting someone. So none of those are back-to-backs. They are spread out elsewhere. Pacers, though, doesn't matter for them. They once again travel the least miles because they're in the Midwest and they have a lot of opponents who are super close, which is very convenient. And they have the fewest back-to-backs in the league. So a lot of that stuff that is totally out of your control and is kind of based on travel and stadium availability, Pacers rank very well. So that is, despite the national TV no love, very good for them in terms of actual product and winning.
Yeah, I mean, it's been sort of, now that the league has paid attention to it and teams rest players on certain nights, it's become less of a thing where you lose both, or you win both back, or you don't win both back-to-backs, right? Like there's been enough sort of like, I think there was probably in the, let's call it like 10 years ago, like kind of like a sports science way to sort of be like, oh, this team's going to lose because they're playing 3 and 4 nights, but the league has done a nice job trying to spread out. Teams understand that better. So there's less of an advantage and disadvantage to the back-to-back stuff, I think. But it does help to be in the middle of the country. It's kind of why like the Warriors 73-9 season is more impressive than the Bulls 72-10 because the Warriors are on a coast versus the Bulls are in the center of the country and did not have to travel near the amount of miles the Warriors did. Probably not as nice a plane as the Warriors, but still. So it helps to be in the Midwest, I guess, for this case.
I think I bring that up every single time we do this show. The first time that Warriors team lost was the end of a 7-game road trip out east against Milwaukee, who wasn't even that good that year. And it was their last game of a road trip because it's super hard to win every game of a long road trip that's really far away and you're traveling all the time. Like, even if it's NBA dudes staying in luxury hotels, like, it's just hard. It just is. And the Pacers do have the advantage of having less distance of travel just because of where they are, at least in the league this year. 17,000 miles less than the Clippers, which is insane. But it still is very taxing. And that can also be a part of your schedule. I didn't even bring this up. Like, they have this in Philly. They play 2 games in Philly in 3 nights. And those often are splits in the NBA just because it's hard to beat the same team twice in a row. So that can be an advantage for teams if you just happen to get the right opponent in that way. Anything else you want to break down, big picture, before we dive in game by game?
How much do you think, like, we don't have a set 5 lineup. We have an idea of who the starting 5 is going to be. How much does that factor into your decisions at this moment? Because I'm trying to decide, right? Like, we know, let's say like 3 or 4 spots, but like, how much is that going to matter knowing who the starting 5 is based on like these games and how they go? Because it's sort of up in the air at least a little bit.
You know, it's funny because one of the Pacers' best stretches last year, after the Zerbiak stuff and before they and right after they switched Jalen Smith out of the starting 5, that was their like best stretch of the season, right? Like mid to late December to like right when Haliburton got hurt, they looked great.
Yeah, they were 23 and 18 at one point, right? That was sort of the peak of the season.
Yeah, halfway they were over 500, like looking good. And of course, it was like literally right at the halfway point when he went down. So my prediction for the starting five is Halliburton, Brown, Matherin, Toppin, Turner. But if they discover that that isn't working and they switch something up, that did help them last year. So I'd assume they would do that at a similar amount of games played. That would be like January now because the calendar's pushed back a little bit. But that I guess would play in. But it's that stuff can be hard to predict.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's no chance they'd end up starting Buddy Hield.
There's not no chance. He's
Okay.
good and pairs
No, I
very
know.
well with their best
That would be
player.
the one I would think of. I guess is like.
But who would you not start?
No, I would start Matherin over Buddy Hield. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, you're paying a guy $19 million. I don't know. I mean, what to do, and then we'll see how much they play.
The swings to me would be Buddy somehow starting and Toppin versus Walker, depending on who fits with who and how that actually looks. But
you can't think Walker's ready to start, but maybe they just want him to start.
They didn't even start Matherin last year. That would be
which I think worked at least initially, right? But
it did.
I mean, it depends. Sometimes you may want to start the rookie to get him because you have the ability and the time, and you want to give him the space to make mistakes and grow, I guess. So,
and it can be, to me, the trouble they'll have is most of the players on their team will have a better net rating playing with Tyrese Halliburton than not. So it'll be like, whose difference is the smallest? Like, who can they play the most effectively without him? And that could be just how they decide, is not actually who the best five is. It's who's the best five without their best player. And then that just becomes your bench. So maybe they feel that out a little bit. I don't know. They have a lot of figuring out to do. You know what they don't have to figure out is who they play on opening night. My Washington Wizards. It's always fun. 2 years in a row hosting the Wizards to open the season, October 25th. So weird that it's pushed back, but that is a part of the new reality of the NBA calendar. Last year, Adam, we both predicted a victory on opening night, and they lost to the Wizards. And we both predicted they would beat the Spurs in their second game, and they lost to San Antonio Spurs. The red flags about their defense started up right away. They played 3 games to open up the season in October versus the Wizards in Cleveland and then versus the Bulls at home. How do you predict we will see the Pacers season start?
I want to say win. The Wizards are not going to be very good. I mean, they're intentionally not going to be very good. I mean, unless Jordan Poole has what
a bold prediction.
I know, I'm real bold. The team predicted to have, I think, win 24 games, maybe the worst in the NBA. I glanced at over-unders before this. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a home game you should win, and it's a nice way to start the season because I don't think it's going to get much easier the next, 4 games, give or take. So, like, this is the one you kind of can get, and hopefully this is. So I would say win.
Funnily enough, their start isn't super hard, but it's tough. I also think they should beat the Wizards. It's going to be very funny to see Poole plus Kuzma plus whatever the heck they try to do. But if their defense stinks on opening night again, those two could go off for a bajillion points and they could lose. But I will once again predict a win. In fact, I think that might be their only win until they play Charlotte on November 4th because their schedule's tough and they match up poorly with Cleveland, the swing game being Chicago, their third game of the season. How do you see this opening stretch, which is at Cleveland versus Chicago, at Boston versus Cleveland, and no back-to-backs in that run? Hey guys, one short little break here so I can talk to you about Birddogs, who make some of the best pants and shorts out there. They make you look good, and their stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg to give you a truly sculpted look. They're like Lululemon. They do the exact same thing, but they fit a lot better. They fit way better than regular shorts because they're not made of stiff, restricting cotton. Instead, they fixed that issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki but stretches. You get a slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. And how do I know that? Because I wore them twice this weekend to go play pickleball. I'm not ashamed to admit I played pickleball. And I wore Birddog shorts while doing it. They use anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that helps you stay cool and dry all day long. You've got to try them. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA or it's the promo code LockedOnNBA when you're checking out, and you can get a free White Tech hat with your purchase. I have one myself. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA or promo code LockedOnNBA for a free White Tech hat with your purchase. You won't want to take your Birddogs off. I can promise you that.
So part of me wants to say they won't lose to Cleveland twice in a week. Cleveland is a much better team.
They just are a tough matchup. Like they've struggled with the two big things for years and years now.
Yeah, no, and Cleveland, I mean, theoretically, they should lose probably at all 4 teams between now and Charlotte, or is it, all 4 games with 3 teams, right? I part of me wants to pick just because I feel like when you play a team twice in a week, it's not quite like playing back-to-back games, but it's enough where you see them, you make adjustments.
Sure.
Like, right, like you don't get this variable where you just sort of like see a team and don't know how to match them, right? Maybe you see them and you can make some slight adjustment, especially that quickly. But I think they probably lose. I mean, the next 4, right? I think they go down in Cleveland for sure. Chicago, they probably lose. They go down for sure in Boston, and then I think that Cleveland's probably close. They also lose that game.
I'll break a difference in you. I think they're better than Chicago now. I've said that when I did the Eastern Conference predictions. Like Chicago's good,
Yeah.
but the Pacers got better than them. I just think they passed them.
Well, the Bulls were better than last year, so maybe they caught up to them. Really,
they were better over the whole season, but
Yeah.
the season record was 3-1 Pacers in that series.
No, but I mean, like the Bulls were the Bulls made the playing games. They were the better. I mean, I don't know how to put that.
Blah blah blah. You and your facts.
I understand what you mean. They beat him, but like now I'm trying to pull from my head if there was any injuries or now how dependent that was on certain nights because it's hard to.
So like Cleveland is better than the Pacers, but like they get a tick above teams that are just as good as Cleveland on talent because they're a worse matchup than some of those teams. Whereas the Bulls get the opposite effect, where like they might be as good as some other teams, but I knock them down because they're a better matchup.
And part of the question with Cleveland too is, are they going to be the 3rd best team in the East next year? I mean, that's sort of up for grabs, right? Milwaukee, Boston, Miami, Philly, and then they're there, but are they going to maybe pass? I don't know, Miami and Philly. I mean, I think they'll pass Philly based on the way the situation's going there. But Embiid's really good, so he could drag them to Embiid himself could drag a bunch of games, but they could be the 4th, 3rd team, and this might be the kind of leap year, right? It would make sense in their progression that they kind of take it from the 4 or 5 seed to a top 3 seed. So maybe they win, I don't know, 55 games or something kind of crazy like that.
Well, hey, after this stretch that potentially goes poorly to open the season, we'll see. Charlotte, who stinks? San Antonio, who probably will stink, depending on.
Are we sure? Maybe Wemby will be amazing.
And Utah, who is as good as the Pacers, all at home. 3 straight wins for me. 5-3 for me after 8 games.
I am 3 straight wins. That's
yeah, but I think they're going to be better than all those teams, and they're at home, and none of them are back-to-backs. Oh wait, the Charlotte game is a back-to-back, but I still think they win that.
Yeah, that's the. I think I'm going to pick beat Charlotte, lose San Antonio. Beat Utah. I'll give you.
What did Wembanyama enjoyer Adam Friedman with a bold?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think San Antonio is going to be as bad as they were last year, but I don't know what that means in terms of how like they'll match up. But they're a tough matchup in general, right? They seem like depending on the coaching's good, and who knows? Wemby might just have one of those. I don't know who would guard Wemby from the Pacers, right? Like, is it Miles Turner, I guess, or maybe depending if he's a guard.
Yeah, he'll be on the perimeter a lot though, so it could be tough to put Turner on him.
You putting Brown on him then? He's
Toppin.
I guess.
Brown. That height difference.
I don't know. I'm literally trying to think. Like, if he's playing 7-2 point guard,
it's probably Turner. It's probably Turner.
Right. Well, it's some combination, right, of that. It's depending on where he moves, but it seems like it'd be Turner.
Yeah, if they play any non-shooter, maybe you just stick Turner on that guy, and then I don't know.
Yeah, that's why he might become, if he develops, become one of the best players, because he's just a matchup nightmare. How do you guard? It's like guarding Kevin Durant with 3 more inches or 4, however tall.
I just want to see him take the 1-legged 3 in Cambridge. There's a chance he doesn't play, as Scott Agnes put it out in his newsletter about the schedule. That is a back-to-back for the Spurs, which is no fun. Hopefully he does play in his only visit to Indy of the season. Fun stretch after this easy part we just talked about. Yeah. Home versus Milwaukee, and then 2 in a row in Philly against the Sixers. Early season Philly. I'm shrugging if you're not watching on YouTube. I don't know. They can't beat the Bucks. They've never beaten the Bucks. I don't care. They're going to lose to the Bucks. But they like
just get back-to-back.
Yes, and yes, thank you. It's also back-to-back, which is tough. And then a lot of times teams split with these teams when they play twice in a row in the same city. Philly should be kind of wobbly, Harden stuff with notwithstanding. So I'll say they win the Sunday one and lose the Tuesday one, but I mean, it could go either way.
So I am with you on this. I think they will split the Philly.
Which one are you giving? Are you going to go the opposite ones as me?
Yes, just because.
Okay.
Yeah, I will. I don't know.
How you beat me? You could just win all these 50.
Well, I think it makes sense, right? You lose the first one on the road. It's a road game you should lose, and then you adjust. And Philly. That team. That could be a disaster year for that team. I mean, that could be like Embiid traded mid-season type team if something goes real bad early on for them.
So is it too early in the we're 11 games in? Is it too early for me to say the next 5 games is a crucial stretch for this team? And let me tell you why. They have a 5-day gap between that Philly game I just said. That's November 14th. And they don't play till Sunday at home against the Orlando Magic. And they play Orlando, Atlanta, Toronto, Detroit, Portland as their next 5. That's a very light schedule. And that is right before a crazy road trip and really tough opponents basically until after Christmas. They have Charlotte in that mix I just
in
described.
Detroit in that mix too on that road trip. But yeah.
So, but that's on the road. Dang, another really long gap, but that's the in-season tournaments in that part too, so we don't even know that part of the schedule. So there's a lot of travel in there. There's some tough opponents in there. One of the opponents, if they don't make the in-season tournament playoffs, won't be as good by default. But either way, if they don't handle this 5-game stretch really well right here, which we have them, you have them at 4 wins, I have them at 6 right now. So let's say they're whatever, 6-5 or 5-6 or whatever. If they can't handle this and they come out of this and they're like 7-9 or 7-10 or something, that's rough sitting with this tough stretch coming after that.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess the question is, are the expectations that high, right? If they're like, right?
They have said postseason and playoffs. They've said the P word multiple times. Chad Buchanan has said this summer they want to be better and grow and be in that mix, and they'll set their own expectations. But like when you spend the way they did, yeah, I think there is.
But they're not. I guess they're kind of spending, but they're like barely above the floor, right? I mean, no, not this summer.
No, they're above it.
They're above it, but they're not like they spent more because they kind of had to. It felt like than because they were like, right? I mean, they did like they sort of like had the money to use, but they didn't like. It wasn't like this is like some kind of like they were like they're spending a shit ton of money, right? They're not in the tax. They're not like they gave Halburn a big contract because they want to keep him, but I'm not sure it's like the money is like that crazy, I guess is what I would say. But I think like we've been in it here, was it 2017 or 2018, 2019, when remember they started off really slow and they had that like players only meeting mid-season where it was like, I think it was Thaddeus Young and Oladipo, and they turned it around like that because that team had much higher expectations. And I'm not sure like if they're 7-10 through this stretch, if that's like going to happen, if it's that kind of disappointment of a season, I guess.
Maybe so. And they have 3 rookies. They'll have 2 second-year players playing a lot.
Right,
like they're still young, but I don't know. I think like especially given the quality of opponents they'll have had through that whatever this would be 17 games, I think they would expect better than a poor record at that point.
Well, I'm going to say I say they lose to Orlando, win the next 4.
Wow. Okay, so you have loss at home versus Orlando.
I think Orlando
win in Atlanta. They come home, beat Toronto on a back-to-back. Then okay, you beat Detroit and Portland. That should happen. Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
I think they lose both of the back-to-back in Atlanta and then coming home because this is why going through the schedule game by game is important to me. No. Versus Toronto, winnable game. Back-to-back coming from Atlanta, 3rd game in 4 nights against a Toronto team that I guess they're going to look different, but still has like rangy defenders and is huge. No way they win that to me. I mean, not no way. That's obviously very extreme, but like that's hard. That's a hard game that is against a team that on paper they're better than. So that one is a flip one to me. I think they lose both of those.
So I'm going with your kind of thought where they lose to Orlando. So then I put them at what 4-8 based on my picking, right?
Yes, but then 4 wins in a row.
Well, that's what I mean. So I think there's some of a kind of like a Thanksgiving sort of kind of nut up time basically, and you got to win some game, right? And I think all 4 are very winnable, right? I mean, they're all then
sure.
Neither of those 4 teams like wow, they're so much better. Atlanta, I think will not have a great season. I think there'll be some chemistry issues and just
new
blowing.
Coach.
I mean,
well, sort of not new completely, but
yeah, but I know what you mean. I mean, the Nate McMillan replacement. I don't know. I just feel like this is sort of the time where they will sort of, like I said, sort of have to right the ship and figure it out, and it might just turn to a nice little run here before they head into like what is this 6-7 road games in a row? Like a deathly stretch. Well, I guess there's a plan, so we don't.
Yeah, so by default, I should say with the in-season tournament, if they don't make the postseason part of it, one of the games is guaranteed to be at home of the 2 they'll play. One is also guaranteed to be on the road, though. So if they don't make the playoffs, then they are guaranteed to have at least 7 of 8 on the road.
Yeah, which is
brutal. That's brutal. And they're pretty tough. So I have them 9-7. You have them 8-8. And then here we go. I guess I'll call this the start of December, even though the first game is November 30th. At Miami. Then there's 2 games that we can't predict because of the midseason tournament. They get out of that at Detroit, at Milwaukee, at Washington, and then straight to Minnesota for a back-to-back against the Wolves to end a very long string of traveling in between games. That's like as scheduled of a loss as you can possibly get. I mean, I think Miami with Dame is going to be really good. I think they can beat Detroit, but who knows?
You're already putting him on there?
Yeah, I'm putting mine on there. I think they can beat Detroit, but it depends where they're traveling from. They never beat Milwaukee. They can beat Washington. Well, again, they'll be travel night crazy. I'll give them the Washington win, but I don't feel great about it. And then all of a sudden, they're at 500 for me with who knows what happens in those 2 games that aren't scheduled.
So you think Dame will be on the Heat by this point? Is that what you're just? I'm just so I
Yes.
understand that correctly. Okay, I'm just making sure. It's fun. Just because I'm trying to be slightly different, I think they win one of the Miami games. Partially, I do think
for the same reason we talked about Philly earlier, I suppose.
Well, and so I'm trying to remember it last year. They didn't. Miami tends to have not the best regular season. It seems like at times, right? Last year they won 40 something games. I can't remember on the dot. Was it like 45? 44. Okay, that's close. And I think the Pacers tend to do well in these Miami games. Like I remember racing game maybe 2 years ago where Brogdon basically won it for them in Miami on like a last second shot. Like there's like something about the Miami that kind of the team going. I don't know if there's sort of the playoff history from the 2010s or whatnot. So I think they win one of them, and then I think they lose to Detroit. In Detroit, because they're not going to sweep Detroit this year, just because they don't. That's just how it works. They're not going to sweep Detroit.
So wait, repeat that. Split Miami. So, which one do they win?
So I think they win December 2nd in Miami.
Okay, and then lose to Detroit.
Right. Yep. Lose to Milwaukee. Washington win. Minnesota loss. Walking through that, and then there's two games we can't pick there that will appear.
This is a fun Heat fact that is. I'll explain why it's funny after it. The Heat have made the finals twice since 2016. Right. In the same stretch, right? Since the start of the 2016-17 season, they have only won more than 45 games once in the regular season.
They were the 1 seed one of these times, right?
They were. They went 53-29.
That's right. It's a really weak year. They went 1 seed.
So here's why that's gimmicky. They played 72 games in 2021 and went 40-32. And then the COVID year in the bubble when they made the finals, they were 44-29. So they would have got it in 2 of those years. But it looks hilarious to look at and go, wow, the regular season record never looks amazing, even though they are clearly very good. And if they get Dame, even better.
Yeah, and I mean the Pacers. Let's see, right? They split it. They split with the Heat last year. They beat the Heat in the series during the COVID year. So like they're not like they do play well against Miami. I mean, it's just that was a different team, so you never like it's not like
there's what the Heat during the COVID year series.
They won 2-1 in that. Not in the postseason. I'm sorry. In the regular.
Oh, the regular.
Season.
I was like, huh?
Yeah, they got stuff in the postseason. I'm sorry. I mean, regular season wise.
Regular season series.
Yes, they won the in-season series. They won the in-season in 2018-19. So, like, yes. But obviously,
you remember that 2-1 because I was really looking forward to game 2 because it was going to be Warren versus Butler after their big in-game scuffle, and it never became a thing till the bubble.
Oh God, yeah.
the days.
It's going way back. Anyways. Yeah, I don't know. I just think they somehow in the rest didn't play well against Miami. In the postseason, Miami's a different team. But in the rest of they are there. And I'm like you. I'm not sure I'm putting Dame on the Heat quite yet. But
wow.
I mean, who knows? I don't know. It seems like it's either every day it's like, oh, it's going to happen today, or and then it gets keep getting pushed every so often. So I don't know what to believe.
Their next stretch, they get back home and they play the Clippers. Then they play the Hornets at home. Then they go to Memphis and then Orlando. So a little bit of, or they're home against Orlando. So short travel for about 5 days and some winnable games. I think they lose coming home to the Clippers. That's a winnable game, but there's travel coming back. They beat Charlotte and they lose in Memphis. And then tough. I think Orlando and them are really similar in terms of talent this year, but I think they can win both home games. And they just have beaten the Magic like a lot in the last couple of years, even when those teams are similar on talent. Love that analysis for me, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I might even. I think that's kind of true, but I have some memories of losing some Orlando games like really stupidly. I feel like last year they definitely lost
Pacers
one.
Magic series, huh?
Yeah, you should. I'll make my picks while you do this. So I agree. If you lose to LA, I mean the Clippers. The only thing is we don't know the Clippers schedule. I guess could this be a back-to-back for them? Who knows who's hurt by that point with the Clippers because it's always someone. Like that kind of variable could help kind of them steal a game. But then I would say win Charlotte, lose in Memphis. Beat Orlando because I picked them to lose Orlando last time at home, so I don't think they lose twice. I'm with you there.
You have win, loss, win there. Okay.
Yeah. Which is hard because it is Orlando back-to-back. It's a Memphis, then come back to play Orlando at. No, I'm sorry. I have the wrong. It's Charlotte. It's Charlotte, Memphis back-to-back. Never mind. I look at the days wrong.
Okay. The Magic are 3-10 in their last 13 against the Pacers. So
it was one of those that Terrence Mann game where he had like a ton of points.
Terrence Ross. Yes.
Terrence Ross. I'm sorry.
Wrong Terrence. That is correct. 119, 118 win.
I remember that one being really
for a 1-point win.
I remember that being a really dumb game they lost, if I remember right.
Before that, it was quite the hot stretch for the Magic against the Pacers, though. Okay. we continue on where we've reached Christmas. What a weird schedule. Fun little stretch here where it starts off nice and easy in Houston, and then a bunch of tough opponents. Hey, man, when does this get easy? Because they have a road trip in there in early January. They don't play an
Washington.
easy home stretch until Houston. Yeah. Wow. I mean, that is ridiculous. So this is when things heat up. Do you think they win on the road after Christmas in Houston?
Can I ask you what record I have currently for the team?
You
Just
are no, actually,
No.
you can't. You cannot.
I feel like I'm at about 13 wins. I feel like
You are
somewhere in
very
there.
close to 13 wins. Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to keep track in my head. You have the actual Excel sheets. You can look at yourself.
do.
Look at it when you do it.
We determined before the show that we can't let our
No,
win
you're right.
total influence our picks.
You're right. I was that was a bad crux. I think beat Houston, beat
Okay.
Chicago, lose New York. Maybe lose the next like 8 games.
Yeah, that is possible. So 3
But
wins
I'll
in a
win.
row. Okay, I'll go win in Houston as well. I think Houston's not going to be as good as people give them credit for. Lose in Chicago and lose in New York. And
Is
now
Houston-
we've closed out. I'll tell you, they've closed out 2023, and you have them at 15-14, and I have them at 14-15.
Okay. Is Houston the worst team in the league next year? Or am I
Not the worst. They'll be better than probably the Wizards.
okay?
And
Yeah,
the
you're right. The
Wizards
Wizards are probably
to
the
me,
worst team.
but they got better certainly. But like, how much better? I don't know. Count a lot on Van Vliet.
Oh yeah, that's right. So that should make them somewhat a little better. I don't know.
We've reached 2024. Whew. Who did this? Who allowed the Pacers to have this January? This is probably the hardest month of the season to me in the totality of their opponents in travel.
Well,
I'll
they
just
played
read
the top 2 teams in the East on
right
2
away.
games in a row.
I will
Twice.
read their whole January schedule just for fun, for this exercise. At Milwaukee, come home versus Milwaukee, then versus Atlanta, back-to-back versus the Celtics, then again versus the Celtics, then the Wizards come to town. At Atlanta, at Denver, at Utah, at Sacramento, at Portland on a back-to-back. Also, that Utah-Denver back-to-back is impossible. No team has ever won that, I think.
They always
because
play it
of the
every year. Every year they
Then
play that
at
same.
Phoenix, then they come home and play the champion Nuggets. Then they play the Sixers. Then they play the Suns. Then they play the Grizzlies and go at Boston to close the month. Insane. They'll be surviving for January.
So right, there's only 2 non-playoff teams in that stretch, right? Atlanta
last
didn't make
year's
it.
playoffs, you mean?
Yeah, Atlanta didn't make it, and Utah didn't make it.
Portland did not make it last year.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. Yes, you're right. So it's 3
Portland and Utah
non-playoff.
are their 2 non-playoff teams, and Washington. So 3.
4 non-playoff games, basically.
So I'll just go with the wins first. Okay. Beat Atlanta at home. Beat Washington at home. Win in Portland. And beat Memphis at home. That is my only wins of the month.
Okay, I think they.
Because okay, sorry. For a rationale. Beating Milwaukee's hard. Boston,
Yeah.
one of the games is on a back-to-back. Then that road trip is brutal because of the altitude back-to-back. The Kings Pacers isn't a rivalry, but
Yeah,
it's
think-
more of a thing. I think the home
definitely
team wins both of those.
rivalry-ish.
Phoenix is going to
Rivalry-ish.
be amazing. Denver is amazing. Philly's very tough for the Pacers, and Embiid always kicks their butt. And then they play Phoenix again, and then they're at Boston on TNT, and winning against one of the best teams in the league on the road on national TV is very hard. So I feel like this beyond that stretch I said earlier of like 5 pretty important games, like this is the month where you'll go, okay, if they survive this month and are in the mix, then they have a chance to do like something interesting this season.
So I'm going to be a little different because I think they'll win the second Boston game.
Okay.
I think they'll lose both Milwaukee's, Atlanta, first Boston. So that'll be 5 losses in a row. I think I have. Win second Boston, win Washington, lose. I think they beat Sacramento. I think they should probably lose that Portland game.
Back to back, that's tough. I mean, giving them a win there is.
That's
But you
tough.
never know.
I think the Sacramento game. I think simply for the, and maybe it's the opposite way too, because like Sabonis will come up will kind of play up for the game too. But like I just feel like there's some of that like there is it's not. I know what you mean. It's not a rivalry, but there is because it's like the teams traded their best players.
They're always going to be connected.
Yeah, it's like a very high energy.
Also,
game.
sorry, must interject this again. A key point of actually doing this exercise that we're doing, because it seems insane to run through the schedule game by game. Playing at Portland, they're better than Portland. It's a back-to-back in the middle of a very long road trip. That is a hard game, even if the Blazers are not very good.
The one benefit of the Kings game is it's 2 days off in between the Utah.
Yes.
So they play Utah, like probably will go to Sacramento, spend 2 days there, which is thank God Sacramento's not like Los Angeles where they would lose because they'd be partying for 2 straight days. And then so I think that's maybe a win. And then
you have at Portland as a loss, and then you're off to Phoenix, right?
Yeah, lose to Phoenix, lose to Denver again. Do we think Philly is? I don't. Is that one game where, like, you've lost so many, you got to get up for it? I'll say Philly win, lose Phoenix, lose Memphis, lose Boston. How does that sound?
I mean, this is the month. Like, if you're going to point to a month ago, this is where like I hate to talk like this. This is before the trade deadline. This is before the All-Star break. Like, a lot of what the Pacers season could look like will be talked about because of January. Right?
So,
like, they're skidding, they're rising, they're in the mix, they're not in the mix, whatever. Like, that is the month where a lot of those conversations will really start.
I know you hate this, but I'm gonna ask you anyway.
Oh boy.
Who? Let's say they get to this stretch and finish it. And I don't know what the record is. We probably both have like 17 and 20 or 22, right? I don't know what's the record you have, Matt.
It is between 17 and 22. Yes.
Well, what's the record you have? You don't tell me mine. What's the
okay?
record?
Yes, mine is currently 18 and 28.
Okay, so at this point, who's the most tradable player on the team?
Buddy Hield.
Yep. Who's second most?
Great question.
Bruce.
So the Buddy reasoning is not because of anything about Buddy Hield.
No,
it's just expiring contract.
Number.
Right.
And he can play on a team.
Second most, probably Daniel Tice.
You don't think Bruce Brown?
It certainly could be.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm thinking. And
here's the thing: if they're 18 and 28, like, he's probably. I mean, this isn't a necessity, but like, has he been so good that he's vaulted you up a tier? Like, who knows?
Yeah, but wasn't he just on a really good team in the playoffs? Was good in the playoffs.
Well, he was good for the Nets and the Pistons, even when they were not great.
Yeah, but like, he's got that like cachet of like, oh, he's on the wrong roster. You put him on a playoff team, he's gonna be good, kind of thing.
Yes,
right?
And it's a yeah. I mean, it sucks to think of contracts that you just signed as tradable, but like, it's a pretty tradable contract.
Yeah, well, it's also if he stinks, you don't pay him anymore. It's kind of expiring, and you usually own the rights to him if not. So it's actually
so expiring. Like, TJ McConnell's also half guaranteed next year, so. Like, a lot of veterans are half expiring for them.
Yeah, with the cap weight is right. They wouldn't stretch McConnell, right? They're not going to
stretch. No, waive. I kind of doubt it, but maybe.
Well, right, because that's what the half guaranteed is for. You do like that weird thing where you can stretch it over 3 years. You can clear
like $7 million of space by getting him. Yeah,
but like the way the cap is now, that number is now like I was looking at the cap. Right, it's like Nick Stauskas still on their salary cap.
Yeah, yes.
But did Monte Ellis get off last year finally?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So like
this is. I was actually going to say this. This is one of the wildest Pacers stats possible. Monte Ellis and Tyrese Halliburton were on the Pacers books at the same time for part of one season.
Monte was for like
that's crazy.
Because Monte you cut him mid-year, so you got the 2 years, but you only owed him like $9 million. You stretched it out over 5 years.
Yes,
I think was the number.
It's crazy because he had a player option, but the guarantee date was before the option date.
Well, remember they cut him and signed Lance, right? I think that's sort of what the move was, and they were much better all this time.
That's a very unique contract structure, but a non-guaranteed player option. Very odd.
Is Monte Ellis the worst rated signing in the team history in at least the last 10 years? Anyways, because Tyreek Evans at least was like not more than a year. That's a pretty bad one too. Yeah, okay. I think we got through January, right? So I think you have 18-20, and I'm sure I'm right around that number. So this is not looking like a playoff team at the moment.
They'll know, like, they can look at their schedule and go, yeah, it's easier from here. Like, and it is. They're right. But reality is reality at some point, and the deadline is a deadline by default. So maybe they're better than that. Maybe they're not. Maybe they go on a little run before the All-Star break, because from this point where we are, they have 8 games before the break, right?
And the question,
another important stretch.
I wonder here too, like, does Mathurin have a sophomore slump as a senior? Because that seems to be sort of the NBA trend, right? As most guys' second years are just after a high first year, they have a down. Now, he kind of had a slump anyway, second half of the season, so maybe he's okay. But like, who is going to be the other guy that really popped for this team to help them get above, right? I mean, I guess Halliburton,
Nemhard, Toppin, somebody's going
to have to, right? But like, if it's just Halliburton again, I'm not sure he can drag them to the number of wins. At this point last year, right, they were 23 and 18 or whatever, and he doesn't really have that ability, I think, based on this schedule, to carry them to that number this year.
So that month will be huge. If they can pull off even 3 wins in that month that are like unexpected or against a team that is considered better than them, for me, that would be 21 and 25. Like, that's a team you can stick the course with and feel good about where you are, just because your schedule's been hard to that point.
Well, it's the kind of thing where if you're a playoff team, you go on a West Coast trip and you don't get completely smoked usually.
Right.
Win.
And last year, remember they were 23 and 18? Huge win against the Lakers. Nemhard hit that buzzer 3. Huge win against Golden State on that road trip, right? Those were huge wins for their season and trajectory, up to the point of how.
Yeah, no, those were games I bet we both had wrong on the schedule.
If only I could easily check that.
I'm assuming we did. I mean, yeah.
At Los Angeles Lakers. You predicted a win. I predicted a loss. At
Oh,
Golden
nice.
State.
I got
At Golden State, we both predicted a loss.
because I definitely could have predicted Andrew Nembhard having an insane game against the Lakers, hitting a game-winning shot in the last, and over LeBron.
And that was the difference of you winning and losing.
Because if you asked me last year, I would have said Andrew Nembhard. That guy's going to be a solid rotation player.
Be in the rotation. Yeah, he'll be the
second round pick or whatever he was, late first, whatever he was. I definitely going to be in the rotation. I definitely guarantee that right now.
So post that brutal month, fun times. They come into February at New York versus Sacramento, at Charlotte versus Houston. And they'll be very happy to see that stretch of 4 winnable games. And then they play Golden State on February 8th at home, who should be good. But that is a back-to-back for the Golden State Warriors. So potentially a winnable game there. And a chance to, again, if they can survive January looking good, a chance for them to add some cushion to their schedule. What do you think they do in that 5-game stretch?
Do they get a win in New York? I feel like a lot of teams sort of like it's a big moment. People love playing in Madison Square Garden. I think I'm gonna go win against the Knicks, lost Sacramento on the back-to-back, beat Charlotte, beat Houston, lose Golden State. I think Golden State probably still wins that game.
Beat Charlotte.
I assume somebody goes. It's gonna. I guess
lose Golden State.
Who does Golden State play before the Pacers?
Let me be clear about the Warriors' schedule leading up to this. In Brooklyn on the Monday, in Philly on Wednesday, at Indiana Thursday. And it's their last game of a 5-game road trip.
That should be a win for the Pacers, actually. So I'll go Pacers.
I agree.
Especially because they're not.
I will share you every step. Actually, man, it depends on how January goes, but I think they can legitimately win all 5 of these. I don't know. New York's good. But
I think they lose one in New York, Sacramento. I'll just pick them to win in New York.
You know what? I haven't given them a good run all season. Oh, that's just stupid. I got to use actual analysis. All right. Loss in New York for me, and then they win the next 4.
I like how you talked yourself out of that right.
I did. I talked
You're like, I'm going to do this. No, I'm not.
No, I'm not going to do it. Because I think Sacramento, I said this earlier, I think the home team wins both. Is it possible that the Knicks-Pacers rivalry becomes a revived thing? Maybe. Zerbiak started it. Team USA's got Pacers fans talking about this Brunson Halliburton stuff. I don't think it's going to be a rivalry, but maybe. Yeah,
I mean, I assume the Knicks are probably going to get the next superstar, so
that is very possible.
Ahead, I would guess. I would assume,
possible.
But because they finally shown some promise as a decent team, but they got.
Let's get to the All-Star break. 3 games at New York, at Charlotte, at Toronto. I will say that there's their Knicks win. They're feeling good, and then win in Charlotte, loss in Toronto.
I will pick loss in New York, win in Charlotte, loss in Toronto as well.
All right. We've reached the All-Star break, and we are past the trade deadline. So that is also important to note for the remainder of the games. Adam has them at 23-31, and I have the Pacers at 24-30. Wow.
We are like
neck and neck. Last year, you were way lower on them than me.
Yeah. So now the question becomes: is what teams are tanking this last 30 games? Because this is the time when if you are making the playoffs, you can go on a real kind of run. What I call the dog.
Okay, but also they have their post-break schedule is pretty easy. Like if they have a slightly better record than either of us,
played all the tough teams already.
Yeah,
they played all the good teams 9 times.
I know they have a very solid post All-Star break schedule. So if they're still in the mix, that is encouraging to me. That means they have done well against good competition and can do good things. They come out of the break 4 at home: Detroit, Dallas, Toronto, New Orleans. They could legitimately win all 4 of those, right?
Yeah, New Orleans. Yeah, I mean Dallas is decent, I guess. Maybe
that's true. They lost at home to Dallas last year.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question is Kyrie completely blown the team up with his antics? And then the Pelicans, I think,
or has he successfully recruited LeBron to Dallas by then? To be clear, that was a joke.
All right, I'm not even going to take that seriously. To be honest, I'm just going to ignore it. I will go. I'll go back-to-back wins. Dallas, Toronto. I said it before the show. I think the back-to-back thing's a little bit more overrated than it's given.
All right.
It's a little
4 wins.
Overrated.
4 wins.
No, I think they lose one of the New Orleans games. I'll pick they lose the one in New Orleans. So I think they win the first 3 after the break, then go to New Orleans and lose. That's always
they play Detroit in their first game after the break, and you didn't give me that one.
Did I miss? Detroit. So I'll pick them to win their first 4 and then lose to New Orleans.
Right, I did the same thing. Great. We're in March now, and their March schedule is not as hard. This is the opposite of January. I'll just read their whole March schedule again because it's maybe their easiest month of actual points. There are some road games in here, but at New Orleans, at San Antonio, at Dallas, versus Minnesota, at Orlando, at OKC, home against the Bulls, Nets, Cavs, at Detroit, at Golden State, at Lakers, at Clippers, at Bulls versus Lakers. That's a very manageable month. Well, if this was in January, it literally could change the trajectory of their season just because of the order of the games.
So they only get one Lakers game, and obviously the other game is maybe would be the Lakers game of the other two, but that's the way this could have shook out.
Maybe so.
Right? Because there's two games they don't play, and it looks like that seems to be like the Lakers is one of them.
No, I said Lakers both in that month. Sunday, March 24th, and Friday.
Okay, I see. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just So who are the? Maybe you don't know this. Who are the two games they would if like they don't make?
It's got to be East teams that could be a team you play 3 or 4 times. It just has to be.
Okay, so it's just okay.
Yep,
that makes sense. Okay,
so I will go. This is an interesting little stretch of 5 games with travel between all of them: San Antonio, Dallas, Minnesota, Orlando, OKC. No back-to-backs. I think they win. San Antonio's gonna be in tank mode here. So I think they win in San Antonio, lose in Dallas, beat Minnesota, and then lose the last 2.
I'll pick loss in San Antonio, loss in Dallas, win against Minnesota, win against Orlando, loss Oklahoma City, and then where'd you end up ending?
I stopped there. So
okay, so, yeah, nice.
All right, let's just get to the road trip. So home Bulls, home Nets, home Cavs. What you got? No back-to-backs.
Bulls win. Nets are probably tanking at this point. Well, no, they don't have their pick.
No,
right?
I don't think they are because they don't have their own pick.
Their pick, right? So then, but I mean that weird situation where like they just aren't good
they don't
enough.
have their own pick, but like you still want to play your young guys at some point.
Yeah, what's right? Well, we've been here before. The Nets were like they didn't have their picks in the mid 2010s. They were still kind of, but they weren't like that good still.
Yeah,
like, I think they had one season they were like the 8 seed maybe. I think they were like okay. I'll put win against Brooklyn. I think lost against Cleveland. And then them we're on the a 5-game road
before the road trip. Yep.
Yeah.
I say beat the Bulls, lose to the Nets, and lose to the Cavs.
So you think they get swept by the Cavs this year? Because there's one more game left, but so far.
Well, the end of April games are just guessing. Like who knows what these teams are doing? But yeah, I mean the Cavs are a tough matchup for them. They have been for years.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
You're right, though. I didn't realize I was that low on it. They have a little road trip after this. 5 in a row on the road. And then if you count the game coming home, playing the Lakers, there's some travel. There's also a back-to-back on this trip in LA and in LA. So it's a back-to-back, but a non-travel back-to-back, which is pretty nice. That is convenient for them. At Detroit, at Golden State, at LA, both teams, and then at Chicago. I think they win in Detroit. I think they win. That might be it, honestly. The 5th game of a road trip is super hard. Both LA teams are good and should be trying at this point. I think they just beat Detroit on this trip.
I think they beat Detroit. And I think they beat the Lakers again at home.
Whew.
Or in LA.
I love it. So you got Detroit to win as well. Okay.
And then I think they lose the other Los Angeles game because the back-to-back. And then
that'll end up March. I think they beat the Lakers at home.
Oh, and at March, I think they lose to the Bulls and beat the Lakers.
Perfect. We've reached April. Pacers chasing a play-in spot, and neither of us have their record quite in a position.
What's the record now?
Be there.
No,
I will not tell you until we're done.
You've told me already a few times, but okay.
There's only 7 more games, so it's a little different. But their close is pretty easy. 2 Brooklyn games: OKC versus Miami, at Toronto, at Cleveland versus Atlanta. And there is no back-to-backs in that stretch. I will just do the first 4 of these. So Brooklyn, OKC, Miami, with the second Brooklyn game being on the road. I actually think they'll win all 4 of those. Miami is set at this point, is my guess.
Yeah, the Brooklyn always worries me just because they're not going to be tanking. So do they actually just dealing with the young guys? But I think I'll follow your lead. I will go. They win all 4.
I mean, there should be better than the Nets and as good as the Thunder, and then Miami is just at this point. So
yeah, who knows? They could be competing for the 1 seed, or they could be the 9 seed. I don't know. It could be anything. Who knows with them?
I actually also intentionally made you do those 4 games so I could bring this up. Their last 3: at Toronto, at Cleveland versus Atlanta. What are the odds you give me that any one of those games has a big, huge seeding implications involved?
The odds of it?
Yeah.
So
I'd say Like
counting
Eastern
play-in as
Conference playoffs or play-in seating implications.
Okay, so the play-in conference, because I think Atlanta will be in that play-in.
I agree.
So I think,
and I think
I
Toronto.
think
I don't think they will be, but they could be. Like, there's a chance. It's a very important.
yeah, I think Toronto and Atlanta's games will matter. I think maybe Cleveland is locked into whatever seed 3-4 spot.
I agree. That's important to what I was about to say.
So yeah, so maybe
my predictions will be lose in Toronto, beat Cleveland because they're locked in, and then beat Atlanta to close out the season.
I will pick them to win all three.
Ooh.
I have an incredible streak of them closing out seasons last year.
Adam as the under 500 Pacers closing on an 8-game winning streak.
I have an 8. No, I picked them losing to one to Brooklyn, didn't I? Did I not?
You did. Which one? The in Brooklyn one, right? Never mind. You're right.
Yeah, I don't think I did, but let's say I did. in Brooklyn.
Well, that's actually funny. All right. Where do you think you ended?
35 and something.
40
36.
and 40.
Oh, that's what I thought would happen. All right.
40 and 40. I have 39 and 41. And remember, there's 2 flex games that we don't know. So the reason that my win total prediction has been about 41, but they actually have some tougher back-to-backs against crummy opponents that kind of influence. Like, that is why I think this is so. I know I've said this a million times, but that is why I think this is so important. Like, just to see that on the schedule go, oh, wow, when they play Toronto at home, that's a game you'd think they win. That's a back-to-back. When they play in Portland, a game you'd think they would win. That's a back-to-back, right? In Minnesota, is it like all these games that are like kind of 50-50s have kind of gone against them in terms of being back-to-backs this year. And a lot of them are travel back-to-backs. Like, that's tough. That's just something that makes your schedule harder, even though it's in total not that hard on paper.
Yeah. The other thing is that
both of their home Toronto games are back-to-backs. Sorry.
The other thing is that injuries and like fortunate timing on other people's back-to-back schedules also play a lot more factor than I think we're able to even. We can't predict injuries now, and it's hard to look at every schedule right there. They're back-to-backs, so that can really kind of throw things. I mean, right? If I don't know if Paul George is hurt during the Clippers game, both of them all of a sudden, right? That's wins. Or if Embiid is hurt and there's no Harden, Philly all of a sudden it goes from being like, oh, maybe they get 1 of the 4 against Philly to like, oh, they could win all 4, right? Like, there's things like that can break their way. Like, maybe, I mean, Giannis hasn't played a few times against the Pacers, but they still lose Milwaukee, so that probably won't matter. But like, those kind of things can factor in. So that's the one thing where it's hard to predict right now because you just don't know who's healthy.
We both just predict they go 1-1 in the in-season tournament to make this easy on ourselves.
Yeah, so it looked like right last year 40 games was the last play-in spot, right?
That's correct. Yes, the Bulls.
That'll put them probably in that same range. I think
when I look at the over, they go 1-1, you'll have them as a 500 team, and I'll have them as a 40 and 42.
And that's probably on the border. Maybe it depends on what other teams. I think there were like 6 teams in the East that had like over 44 win totals, and then there's like 5 that were in the 35 to 38 range. So like that's about tracks.
Right. Yeah. But this is where I predicted they would be. So it feels good to get through it and go, okay, yes, that feels right. It is in line with what makes sense. So my biggest takeaways from actually doing this, again, I learn a lot doing this. I hope people understand that. Their back-to-backs, while there are few, are hard. They have a very important 5-game stretch early in the season, from Orlando through Portland in like mid to late November. I'm actually going to highlight that, so I'm ready to talk about it during the season. And their January is insane. That's my biggest takeaway. Yeah, if they can survive January, that like might up my projection by like 4 or 5 wins just because of the effort they'll give down the rest of the season.
Is there any team you think that we think will be good this year right now that also that will have like a fall off year, I guess? Like
a fall off year, just like
in the East. Is there any team in the East like does Boston all of a sudden? They're not going. I don't think that's the right pick. But like, is there a team that was really good last year? Like, oh, they're actually not going to be that good this year all of a sudden because I mean, like maybe not that good, but fall from like a top 3-4 seed to a 7-8 seed, I guess.
No, I don't think that'll happen.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
I think the only team that falls out of the top 6 is Brooklyn, and that's for obvious reasons.
Yeah, I mean, right, the Knicks maybe. I mean, that's the one I could maybe think of just because
Randall's every other year player,
right? Like they were the 4 seed one year, and then they were not good the next year, so like maybe. But I mean, I guess Philly is the answer if there's a whole bunch of drama and everyone gets traded. But like it seems like Milwaukee, Boston, and Cleveland are going to be pretty good because they're.
So the teams the Pacers were as good or better than last year, right? Washington, Orlando, Charlotte, Detroit. They should be better or as good, at least in Orlando's case, than all those teams again. So it's can they catch a Toronto who should be worse? They lost Fred VanVleet, a Chicago, an Atlanta, a Brooklyn, right? That will be what defines this. And those teams might have different schedules. So
like that's the other question is there a team that does the opposite and that becomes the up and coming team? right? Does the Magic the team that finally, with all these picks and all these years of sort of pop and become, the 7 seed going to the play game? I guess that's the other thought.
Yeah, there's only one team that surprises, but by default, if you can predict the team that's going to surprise, then they're not a surprise.
Yeah, well, maybe the Pacers are that team, to be honest. Maybe they're the team that,
they were in 2017-18.
Yeah, and well, there usually is each year in at least one conference, one team that's sort of the up and coming, and maybe it's Oklahoma City out west because that's also the same.
Could be Detroit. It's awesome.
Yeah, with Detroit, I don't know. I don't know why I can't get my mind around Detroit being good, but I just can't for some reason.
New coach, Cade's a beast. I don't know, man.
Yeah, you're right. They have the number one pick, who we all thought was really good and probably will be really good if he stays healthy. So yeah,
we'll see. My favorite show. I learned a lot, and now people ask me for my win total. I can give them a specific number, which is, funnily enough, the number I've already been giving people. So I didn't even mean to do that, but hey, here we are with the in-season tournament games notwithstanding. Adam, good to have you back. You don't tweet about basketball. What if people wanted to find you talking about basketball? Where could they do so?
On this podcast when I talk with you, I guess. Maybe about the only place.
You'll be back for your favorite show, Game 1 Overreactions, which is painfully hard for me to do.
I hope they win this year. It's really not fun when they lose. Yeah, there was one year, remember they beat Brooklyn. They won like sort of 140 points.
They scored like 145 points.
Great. It's a great game. And
last year was hard because they lost and gave up like 140 points, right?
Yeah, that sounds right. Didn't they lose the first year under Bjorkgren too? And it was like a pretty bad game. Like they should have won it.
Yeah, well, remember they lost the first game and then they still started 8-3 before they traded Depot. So they were like looking good.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that was a disaster.
People throwing around the word genius. Oh man, what a year!
Yeah, well, that was like there was so much hype around.
What a great day! I can delete the old Pacers schedule tab from my good old.
Yeah, well, I wonder how you feel because you now have to finally get one of these schedule shows. If I went 3 in a row, I mean that's like you might as well just give up.
You probably won 3 of the 4.
I don't think we kept track. I think we've done this before. We just didn't keep track till 2 years ago.
Stupid. So tough.
You're not winning.
You're juicing balls or something. I don't know how you're doing it, but you're cheating somehow. Yeah, you rigged that last, the B-Dubs commercials, right? Where they have the sprinklers come up in the middle of the play. Yes, you did something at MSG to end last season to go that on top. I don't know what you did.
I bet you I also won that year where Sumner hit the game-winning 3 in Atlanta, where it was the third scrum.
Dude, yes, you told it. Oh my god, I forgot.
I bet I won that year. I don't know if I actually did, but
they won the last game of the bubble, and TJ Leaf had 20-something points. Oh, you told.
Oh, the bubble. What time?
The bubble. Tomorrow, wrapping up talk about non-World Cup FIBA play. So Buddy Hield's end of his run with the Bahamas, Tyrese Halliburton's USA Basketball Showcase, Daniel Tice with Germany. Plus news, the Pacers signed somebody. For example, we'll get into some Darius McGee talk and much more. There's been a lot that's happened in the last week of Pacerland. Another player interview coming later this week, although my schedule is going to be wild for reasons I can't control. So we'll see when the dates are, what the day off is. So we'll see. Thank you all for listening today. We'll see you soon.